All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Home Service Expert. Today, I have a very, very special guest. He's made a huge impact in your life and definitely my life. He's the king of branding. Dan Antonelli is visiting us from New Jersey. I've been out to his shop. How you doing today, Dan?
What's up, brother?
Things are good. He's an expert. Logo design, graphic design, branding, web design, small business marketing. He is the chief operating officer at KickCharge. And before that, he was something to do in the 90s with Hip Health Plan. But Dan is the president and chief operating officer at KickCharge Creative, an award-winning New Jersey-based branding agency that specializes in helping home service businesses redefine themselves and stand out with disruptive brands. Dan is a nationally recognized speaker, an expert on home service branding with several books on branding to his credit, including Building a Small Business Brand, which is this. And then he's got a couple other books. And then he just came out with his new book, Branded, Not Blanded. And we're going to talk about that today. With more than 2,000 home service brands under his belt, Dan and his team have overseen branding of more home service businesses than any other brand agency in the world. It's pretty unremarkable. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing these days, about your journey, why you wrote the new book, what's going on with you.
Well, the book is just me trying to give everything that I've learned in the last dozen or so years since I wrote the last book and really try to keep the focus 100% on home service. And while the last book was more broad in terms of how to use brands in general for small businesses, this one is 100% focused on how to use branding to help grow your home service business. So that's why I wrote this one. There's just a lot of, like, when you look at books that talk about branding, there's a lot of like books that are more pie in the sky stuff for stuff that aren't really relatable to the average small business and especially the average small home service business. And I wanted to just put the information out there. There's a lot of bad information that continually gets put out. And I was like, I got to put something out there so that people can just read this book and understand how this is supposed to work. And I want to just try to put that out to try to help as many businesses as I can.
So I've got a lot of notes here. I've got my notes. We're going to talk a lot about the book, but what is it that you usually find? I mean, you've been hanging out in the forums as long as I have. We've been seeing people that they go on Fiverr, they go on Upwork, they literally think their brother's cousin's daughter's an artist that's going to school somewhere, and they don't really. I can't stand seeing someone build a bad brand, and they're so proud of it. Like I was super proud. And I used to say, man, everybody sees my shit everywhere. They always mention it. And they're like, dude, you're blowing up. I see your trucks everywhere. Well, they knew me. And just because they hear my radio commercials or see me on TV or see my brand does not mean it's a good thing. I think people do it for vanity. They wrap their truck and they're like, oh, I got something.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much, like I said, bad information that's put out there. So you see it in the forums when someone posts something on there, and I'm sure some people are just trying to be nice and say, "Oh, that looks cool," but the reality is a lot of the stuff that people are doing is not going to have the ROI that it should. So I look at that stuff and I'm just like, I get upset. Like I'm sad for that business because I'm like, they just are wasting so much money by doing this, and then they're ultimately, if they ever figure out that it's not working, they're going to have to spend so much more money to fix it later on. So I always look at it and just say, well, the cheapest time to build a brand is today. It's not next year. It's not when you're 3 million or 5 million. Like, how expensive it was for you to rebrand at 30 or $40 million, right? There was a lot of stuff you had to redo. But imagine if you had done that better when you were 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. Right. And imagine how much faster maybe you would have gotten to $30 million with a better brand. So that stuff is just sad. And there's, again, just really bad information. There's a lack of knowledge about how the medium works. There's a lack of knowledge about how brands need to function, even on a truck wrap. Like, you see that all the time. And so as I said, hey, I'm going to put this out in a book, like everything I know about this, and like read this before you do anything. Like, I don't care who you're going to hire. Just read this book so you understand, because chances are even the designer you're working with doesn't even really understand this.
So it as simple as possible, define what you would consider to be a brand.
So you think we look at a brand as like a wheel, and the center of that wheel is the logo. Okay. So the spokes going around that wheel are all the touch points. So they're your trucks, your website, your culture is involved in that, your social. All those aspects comprise an actual brand. But if you don't get that hub right, then that wheel, it just doesn't turn as efficiently as it should. And that's the whole crux of the book, is that, you know, people overspend on their marketing because they don't have a good brand. And a lot of it starts with just poor foundation. So you get that hub right, and then that wheel suddenly spins so much easier. You'll need to spend less money on your marketing, less money on recruitment, and you'll be able to charge more money for your work. Like, isn't that the ideal of what everyone strives for? Like, people forget about how average tickets are affected by brand. Like, they think that, you know, they'll be able to increase their average tickets when they have a brand, there it is, yeah, that doesn't instill that confidence. So fix the foundation before you start doing all these other things.
So there was a quote in here, and I didn't write it down, but it was something of it's the price we pay. Something.
Yeah, overspending on marketing is the price you pay for an ineffective brand or unremarkable brand. And that's actually Roy Williams. That's his quote. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the tax that one spends for being unremarkable. So how do you build a brand that's remarkable within your community? Well, you do something that's different. You do something that's disruptive, that doesn't fit in, right? And that's the problem too, is so many guys put brands out there that look like all the same brands in their market because they think that, well, that's what they're doing, it must be working. So I'm going to do something kind of like that. You know, like
what do you mean, like red, white, and blue and be all American? American HVAC company? No one's ever heard of that before.
Yeah, red and blue with, you know, arrows and stuff. That would be genius. Like, it'd be amazing.
Everybody's like, I'm gonna be the veterans. I'm gonna the worst is that I've ever seen is they really screw this one up. There's two things I want to talk about. Number one is they put discount whatever.
Yeah, or
affordable brand. It's like I suck, so I discount myself. And number two, what really is bad, in my opinion, is when they don't have what they do at all. And people tell me, what about Google? What about Yelp? I'm like, you mean the multi-trillion-dollar company? Or you talking about like you're trying to become that? You're a home service company. You can't create your own. Like, what do you do? Do you know how many times Bree has to deal with me when somebody drives by and I'm like, they say like American Mechanical. Yeah. And I'm like, I have no idea what they do at all. Yeah. And sometimes I even write down their website just to find out what they do, because I'm like, why do they do this? Like, their brand means nothing. Yeah.
Bad advice. That's all. I mean, it's just not knowing. Like, you can't say it's bad advice, or you could say they just don't know. Right. And listen, it's just like, I don't know how to do a load calc in my room. I couldn't tell you what kind of springs I need for my garage door. I know the shit needs to go up and down, right? But I don't pretend to know all those things. So, you know, listen, guys get into it as, you know, they bootstrap it when they first get into it. And I understand that. But at a certain point, you got to decide, does this brand actually even represent who I am today? And most guys actually never get past that. Most guys just think that they're going to keep doing exactly what they're doing. That's the recipe for success. There's no reason why I should change anything. And then you have the guys like you who looked at what you were doing and you said, you know what? This actually doesn't represent the level of service that A1 stands for, right? And so you made a change. And that takes guts. I mean, that takes balls to do it, right? You weren't complacent, though. And I see that's a big challenge with a lot of owners, is they get super complacent with what they're doing today. And they think that that's the recipe for success for tomorrow. And it just doesn't really work that way. Just not going to get them where, I mean, they can get there. It's just going to cost so much more. It's going to take so much longer to get there. The business isn't going to be worth as much either when you want to sell it, right? You look at the multiples for the companies that have good brands versus the multiples of companies with poor brands. And you tell me how much more money they're getting for a better branded company.
Well, it's faster to grow. You look at the companies, Parker and Son Service Champions, in a way, Next Gen. They've been around. Next Gen was an up and comer, and he's done a great job. But overall, he branded the crap out of himself with a simple message of he did a lot more than that. But most of these guys have been around, Parker and Sons, George Brazil, which is decent, Service Champions that have not embraced a new logo. They've just been around for years. They got enough service agreements that they don't necessarily need the brand. But it would be impossible to build what they have in today's market. And I'm not going to discount what Leland and Paul Kelly and some of these guys have built, but ultimately, I look at our new vans and I look at what we've done with the logos, and just we're redoing all the wall art. What we're looking at, what's crazy is when somebody walks in and they see the symmetry, and with what you're doing, it's going to be incredible, a vertical track, but when people see the wall, like it becomes a recruiting tool. Like, look,
100%. Yeah.
I get more clients than I know what to do with. That's what everybody's story is the last year and a half, 2 years. But how do you get amazing people? And I think that the brand recruits great people. It's not sloppy. It's, just like clients think, is this person going to just be like, look at the used trucks. They just put something on the wrap. No, it doesn't attract any great people at all.
And that's one of the biggest benefits of a rebrand that isn't really talked about as much, right? People don't come to us and say, "Hey, Dan, we want you to rebrand our company because we want to build an amazing culture." Like, no one says that. That becomes the benefit, though, one of the benefits that happen afterwards. And then they realize after how much it has affected culture, recruitment, just the overall morale of the company. So it becomes this catalyst for this positive change in the company, right? And so you see that. I mean, look at Amanda from Grasshopper. Look at the culture that she's built based on that brand, right? And it's just incredible. She doesn't have a recruitment problem, like just the way you don't have a recruitment problem, because it looks like a place that I want to be involved in. And so you see these companies that struggle with recruitment, and a lot of times, oh, no one wants to work for me. I can't get people. No one wants to come. Then you look at the branding, you look at the culture, you look at the trucks that the techs are going to have to drive, and you're like, yeah, I can see why you're having trouble recruiting people. Listen, of course, people are going to want high salaries and all those other aspects of it, but are they going to be proud to put on the uniform and go home with it? Or like as soon as they finish their job, they're taking off the uniform because they don't want anyone to really know or be associated with that brand name, so that aspect, the cultural aspect of a rebrand is often, overlooked, because initially that's not what they're thinking about. They're thinking about, well, how do I attract more clients? How do I get higher average tickets? How do I make the trucks work for me better in the environment? And those are all great aspects. Those are all, obviously critical benefits of the rebrand. But the culture is something that just really, really affects so much internally once that rebrand is done. It becomes, just such a positive catalyst for growth.
When I was at your office, first of all, you got one of the baddest ass Corvettes I've ever seen. But when I walked up, everything, every detail, it's not like you're just preaching this and you're not living up to it at your own building. You saw the timeline, which was remarkable. Every detail, it's just such a cool feeling. Even your office, can you pan around there a little bit and just show, like, he's got his bicycle on the wall. He's got a lot of things that he's done for what reminds him of when he was younger. His daughter won a contest to be on a plane, which is amazing. You can tell that story later, but you really live up to what you talk about. I come out of there with so many freaking ideas. I've actually got a lot of ideas right now. My brain, I love podcasting, man. I'm telling you, these light bulbs go off. And one of the things that I love in your office is you had a light made. You had a light made of your company, and does it got KickCharge on it, but it's made out of yellow and it's got the star. Like it's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, every single thing within here essentially is on brand, so the colors, how the culture is infused with the wording, the mission statements, vision statements, our core values. Those are all aspects that are basically ingrained within the actual environment. And those are things that also, again, just reinforce what the company believes in. What do we stand for? So use these visual cues to keep the employees engaged as far as what do we really stand for here? Like, what do we do here? So
it's great. I got to experience it. I love going out there. Some people don't really understand these basic principles, and I can promise you they'll save themselves a fortune. You've talked with my lawyers about copyright laws, but understanding the brand and that it needs to be trademarked, memorable, copyrighted. Can you tell me a little bit about what somebody needs to kind of go through before they start coming up with what they're even going to name their brand?
Yeah, I mean, listen, trademark law and copyright law is something that, again, most people just don't give a lot of thought to. So you run into challenges sometimes with names where the name may be available within your state, and you may do a search in your state and say, hey, this name's available, and that's great, and then not realize that name is actually a federal registered trademark, in which case federal will supersede state. So you can launch your business and think you're free and clear, and then start working on building your brand, and then find out later that name is actually owned by another entity. So you have to be very careful about trademarks when you're naming a company. You have to be very careful about trademarks when you're using art to represent your brand. So whether it's an image or a mascot or something similar like that. And so those are aspects too that we talk a lot about in the book. So, I kind of I basically had a trademark lawyer write that whole chapter, because I wanted him to really make sure we had all the right information about trademarking and how that affects home service companies, because we've definitely seen that in instances. Guys have been like 3 years into their brand, and then they get a cease and desist from someone that owns the federal trademark for that particular brand. And so there's a lot of stuff you need to really know about that. It's not as simple as just checking your state registry and saying, oh, no, look, no one's got this name, we're good to go. So I hate when we have to get engaged in some of those conversations, or we're about to rebrand someone, and then we do a little research ourselves and find out that their name can't even be used. And so we try to solve some of those problems as early as possible, because it becomes very expensive later on to fix them.
Yeah, A1 fell first in the phone book, but it turns out other people had that idea. Luckily, I was able to get an uncontestable trademark, but there's what's called prior rights.
Yes.
Prior use.
Yes.
And we do always, there's certain ones we have the ability to win, but overall it's tough. So we're working on a bunch of backup plans. So we got the lawyers at the yin yang. It's really hard to even deal with a company like mine, because you're really, it's not something I don't want to go after prior use, but when I start these new businesses that you kind of know about, and other home service companies, we're going to go about this. It's weird that I feel like I could go into any home service company and dominate, because I got the branding right now. And then I understand SEO and pay-per-click and lead gen and how to train and how to recruit. But one thing that I'll tell you is a lot of people just don't want to bite the bullet. They go, man, I've already got 8 wrap trucks. I got a couple trailers. I'm not going to pay I got to pay Dan's fee, which I'm fine with Dan's fee, they say. But then I got to pay to rewrap everything. Then I got to redo the website. Then he's talking about yard signs. And I understand that this is a cost in your mind, but it's actually an investment.
Correct. Yeah.
Explain to me how often do you hear stuff like that? Like, oh man, everything's got to change. And you're like, yeah, it sucks.
Like sometimes it's just like frustrating, because they're like, oh, well, I'm at 10 million. It's too late to change. I mean, we rebranded Gem Plumbing in New England. They were $100 million in revenue, and they rebranded. So why did they do it? Why did they invest in it? So when you hear guys say, oh, I'm too big, or it's too late, like the least expensive time to rebrand is today. It will never be cheaper today. And you think about missed opportunities. You think about how it affects your overall ROI on your marketing spend. And sometimes it just doesn't make any sense not to rebrand. But if you're going to look at it and all you see are costs, then you're missing the big picture about what a brand does. If you look at it and you say, oh my God, it's so much money for, and I put in quotation marks, just a logo. If you think you're buying just a logo, then yeah, go to Fiverr. Like, by all means, like that's all you'll get. But if you're really looking about how do I create a brand? Well, then that's a different investment, and that's an investment that will have long-term, ROI, right? So you have to look at the numbers, and obviously I get that it is an expensive or an expense, and it is an investment, but like even look at the trucks. So let's say it's 10 trucks and it's going to cost me $40,000 to wrap 10 trucks. Well, you're talking about $40,000 divided by a 5-year life expectancy. So what are we really talking about as far as how many impressions those vehicles will generate over the course of their lifetime versus you buying a single billboard in any given market? So you want to compare ROI on truck wraps versus outdoor and tell me that you think it's too expensive for you to really rebrand your trucks? Well, go buy 10 billboards then and tell me what you think of that. And tell me what the difference is in cost on those things. So those are the parts where I think people don't understand that. They don't understand too, even just how much more phone calls you're going to get from a better branded truck versus a poorly branded truck. How many more times people are going to go to your website because they saw a better branded truck versus a poorly branded truck. So those are the aspects of it too, where, it's a total investment, of course, but like the ROI is stupid sometimes. Like Jason Bueller's 18 trucks generated $1 million in revenue. You think he thinks it was expensive to rebrand? No, it was expensive not to rebrand. That's really where the expense was, because he was not gaining traction as fast as he could, So definitely got to look at that. But like, again, it's that idea of complacency. Hey, what I'm doing today is working. I will not change. So, all right, it's all good. Like, it's fine. But there's going to be people coming into your market that embrace the idea of the power of a brand, and they are going to start taking pieces of your market share. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said. There's a lot of things here. I mean, you've got, I don't know right now, about 5 or 6 companies copying just what you've done for us. I mean, it's weird because it always comes back to you somehow. Because my brand's out there quite a bit in 20 states, but not a lot of people. What people don't understand is you can only read about 7 words tops, and that's like very, very max. Usually 3 to 4 is what they say. And I used to put on my stuff everything I did. I mean, I'd have springs, rollers, cables, bearings, drums, you name it. I do Liftmaster, I do Genie, Lift, a Clopay and Amar, and then I'd have BBB and Yelp and Angie's List. And man, that looked like an ice cream truck. I mean, it was so bad. And now you said keep all of it off. If anything, you can put the ROC on there small because that's a must. The register of contractors, but. Other than that, I'm looking at my trucks right now, and they're just so clean. And what's interesting, and I think the Wizard of Ad would disagree with this, but Ara and Vahe, one of them called me up. This was a year and a half. I think Vahe actually did with ServiceTitan. And he said, hey, how are your 844 numbers doing? I said, we're getting a lot of calls. He said, we've done some studies, and it shows that a local number on the vehicles do, I think it was like 8 times better. So then we started going back to all local numbers because I'm not going to call a home service company with an 800 number. I'm not. I just wouldn't do it. Maybe a flooring company that's massive that I thought I could. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, honestly, phone numbers are becoming less and less relevant to begin with. So probably 50% of the trucks we're actually designing wraps for, we're not even putting a phone number on there because it's not really likely the way in which people are engaged with trying to contact your company. If you have a really well-branded truck, they're going to just Google your name, right? And they're going to just type in the name and then get the phone number that way. But yeah, I mean, to me, I guess if you have an opportunity to put a phone number, a local number is always going to feel more community-based, more central to them. So I agree with using a local phone number if you have the opportunity. It's one of the reasons too, also where I'm not like a huge fan on vanity numbers that spell out things, mainly because the challenge with actually using a vanity number while you're in a mobile environment is really difficult. Like if I have to spell out something like 1-800-GARAGE, and now I got to figure out, okay, the G is the 6, the A is the 1, like I'm supposed to be driving and figuring this stuff out. So like, you gotta remember that trucks are not a point of purchase medium. They are a brand building medium. It's not a call to action, your truck. It's when I need service, I remember this brand because I've seen it in this community. So that's really another thing that relates to that too. But certainly I would say local, if you have the opportunity, yeah, I would do that.
So I had this guy in my office. I get him in here Ken Goodrich with Gettle probably twice a month. And I remember the first podcast I did with him, and he goes, Tommy, when we really went all out and we started putting the radio, because the Wizard of Ads believes in radio. I mean, Roy's a radio guy. And he goes, what I couldn't believe is the search brand for Gettle went through the roof. The Sadie the dog, the holding the flashlight for my dad. He tells a story brand with it. And the combination of the beautiful pictures of the wraps and the billboards and then the story behind it. He said, my Google spend is 1/10 of what it was.
Exactly.
And not only that, but they're all searching Gettle. So
Yeah.
they're willing to wait longer, higher conversion rate, higher booking rate, higher average ticket. Because
Right.
they said, yeah, I want you out here. And then he gave his flashlight, his sunglasses, his dog, the Sadie the dog away. And what happened was, when somebody types in A1 garage door service, I pay pennies on the dollar because I own the brand.
Yeah.
And I think people don't understand that piece of it. And I think it's so important.
Yeah. And, to that point, exactly what Ken's talking about is the weaker the brand, the more money he needed to spend on it. Right. So the idea of how even the vehicles affect digital marketing is something that I talk about in the book. I talk about the fact of being visible within the community, because when I need service, I remember the brand name, and then I just go to Google and I type in the brand name. I don't go into Google and I type in heating repair Phoenix. I type in Gettle instead, because of course it's so much easier to rank higher for Gettle than it is for heating repair Phoenix. So that's the other aspect of it that people forget about, how it's related. So like, well, how is branding related to digital marketing, or even my trucks related to digital marketing? It's because, well, I'm visible in that community and I've made an impact. I've created a disruptive brand that people remember. And look at Ken's brand. Ken's brand doesn't look like red and blue arrows, right? Why would anybody care about that? Why would anybody remember, or, the sun and the snowflake logo? Well, no, it's a boy holding a flashlight. There's a story behind why that boy is holding that flashlight. And I can connect with that as a consumer. I can feel something. So the brand created empathy. Okay. And that's another aspect of the branding that, people forget. They create brands that they like, and they forget about the fact that who you're selling to is a middle-aged woman in most instances. Well, what is she like? So putting her at the front of that conversation is certainly something that all branding should really do, especially in home service.
It's a great story. And anytime you're able to create a story, I started creating a story on a lot of my ads. And my mom's actually going to start doing some radio with me. I don't know how that's going to go. I don't want to be there when she's recording it, but she's a great woman. I took a lot of sound bites out of the book, and I want to just talk through. I'm going to randomly pull these out through my other questions here. The weaker your brand, the more you will spend to market your company. We just went over that. Of course, branding alone won't make your business successful. I mean, you still got to book phone calls. You still got to hire great people and train. It's not like you're just going to all of a sudden. And these things, like they say, they take time. It's not like your new rep all of a sudden triples your business. What it'll do is over 6 months, you'll see a noticeable difference, right?
Yeah. To that point, though, right? So the idea of operationally, you need to be running a very well-run company, of course, right? But what we're trying to do with that branding is make it so that it matches what you actually deliver as a company. So you have a lot of great companies that perform a great service. They just don't look like they do. So if the brand matches what the deliverable is, then that's a win, because you ring that doorbell and they already expect something positive before you get the chance to prove it. Okay. So that's the other aspect of it, is basically controlling the conversation before it takes place.
So brand controls the consumer's first impression, service controls the last impression, which I think you were just saying there.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
I'll go back to some of these a little bit. I've got to see you in your office, you've got a Mac. And what you do is you really start drawing out, like, it's not just this process where you're like, throw a bunch of shit at the wall, see what sticks. You go into what big brands, what colors they have. Is there a huge HVAC company versus the garage door company? You're going to look and make sure you're distinct, and then explain to people it's not just something that you guys take. It's not a couple hours worth of work. And I don't think anybody really understands the process you go through.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say anyone that's looking to do this, I mean, definitely want to research your market. So you want to see what other brands are in your market. You want to look at every one of those brands and what those trucks look like, right? Because the truck is the most visible personification of your brand. It's the most visible aspect of your brand within your own community. So you want to make sure that you're picking colors that are different. You want to make sure you're doing a strategy that feels different. If there's a lot of really uber clean brands in your market, well, maybe you do something that is nostalgia based. Maybe you do something that is mascot based. Like, you got to look at what's happening in that market, and then also try to think about how we can craft a story around this particular brand. What can we say about what we do that's different than what everyone else says? And I always just sort of use this benchmark as a test. Like, if you go on your own website and you replaced your name with your biggest competitor's name and see if the website still makes sense. If it reads exactly the same, then what is actually unique and compelling about your own brand? Right. So try to think about how you can use branding as a way to tell a unique story. Ken does a great job of this, of course. Like, we do things the right way, not the easy way. That already tells me something that is a little bit unique and different about how they approach and tackle the job that they do for a homeowner. So from a homeowner perspective, that tells me a lot. It's like, well, yeah, maybe they might charge me a little bit more, but it's going to be done the right way. And that's what I'm most interested in as a homeowner. I mean, of course, I want value, but I want to make sure that it is done the right way. So try to think about how you can create brands that can tell a story that is unique, whether it's humorous, whether it's nostalgic, whether it's something that speaks to value. Those are all things that you can consider, but definitely the research of what the market is doing will help dictate the idea of how you build something that's disruptive in that particular space.
Yeah, I agree. I think I got a good question here that I want to read out loud here. What happens when you build a big successful brand, then your competitor, who is a franchise, outbids you on pay-per-click, and they increase your PPC name? Can't trademark due to our company name having a geographical city location reference in the company name. We have been in business for over 60 years, so changing the name is not an option. And I'll go ahead and leave that up there for you. So in my opinion, Jennifer, number one is, I don't know your name, but it's very easy to write a bunch of articles by blogging and increasing the link building into your name. You're going to get cheaper and cheaper. There's what's called a quality score. Now, if your competitor is a franchise, they're paying a lot more. Here's the best way to describe it, Jennifer, so you have some idea. If I'm Coca-Cola and I decide I'm a bigger brand than anybody, and there's this off-brand of root beer, just say A&W root beer, I could actually bid in front of Coca-Cola. I mean, I could bid in front of A&W root beer. I don't know how big the A&W is. It's just a bad example, but Coca-Cola could come above there. It could say Coca-Cola, then A&W. But am I giving the best quality response? The quality of what the searcher searched root beer, Coca-Cola came up. They could own that spot for like $500 versus $1 that A&W root beer would pay, because Google wants the best brand to come up for the searcher, right? The person that they're typing in Google. So if you increase your quality score, and this is where all my time and energy would be spent, you could be paying pennies compared to that franchise on those keywords. That's more of a digital marketing question, but Dan, do you have any insight?
Yeah, I would say too, part of that, I would say, relates back to the brand itself, because even if they are trying to buy your keywords or for your own brand name, make sure that your brand is unique and compelling enough so that even if they clicked on that competitor's name, basically that competitor's ad, which is under your name, they would go to the website and realize this isn't the company I thought I was trying to get, right? So that's where you have to make sure that the brand itself is unique, memorable, and something that they'll realize when they go to the other click, when they click on that, oh, well, this isn't the company I was thinking about. So that's, again, just making sure that that brand is really, really well done and executed.
They'll bid on your name. I bid on all my competitors' names. I mean, I bid on pretty much, we've got thousands and thousands of campaigns. There's nothing that's illegal about bidding on someone's name. But if you don't stand out, is what Dan's saying. And if you're stand out, and we stand out, our website stands out. I mean, I can show you right now. Just go to a1garage.com and you'll start to see our vans are on the main website. As you scroll a little bit right towards the center, Dan actually designed the website, and you're getting the right company.
Yeah. And it's so funny you just mentioned that, because that point about the van being prominent high up on the website, I don't understand why that's missed so often. That is, again, the most visible aspect of your brand within your own community. So why isn't your van featured prominently on the top of your website? Because I want to know, oh yeah, that's the van that I keep seeing in my neighborhood, right? So that part of it too. I don't understand why digital marketing companies somehow they haven't quite figured out to put a van on every single site that they really create like you should. That's like, again, it's the most visible personification of your brand. Why wouldn't we want to try to connect that homeowner with that van that they keep seeing? So you may have a cool logo, but if it's only just sitting on the top left of the website, that may not even be, how it actually lives on the truck. Like, so make sure that they see the truck is just one other tip I would say for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
truck is your main thing they're seeing. I just can't get around. I talked to a lot of amateur companies, and there was once a time that I was an amateur, so I'm not talking down to them. But they go, yeah, my guys like trucks. I'm like, even if I didn't like trucks, even if I prefer trucks a little more, I still have I've got the largest, tallest ProMasters, the longest ones I can get. Now, fortunately, I'm still able to get trucks, but I'm like, I should say vans, ProMasters. My point is, there's a few really cool things about a van. Number one, it locks up at night. I like that aspect. But if I get a choice and a guy's like, well, I kind of like a truck because of this, I'm like, do you like a truck or do you like to make more money? Because a van just looks better on the side of a road when I pull up to a house. You got a billboard when you're looking out your window or everywhere you go. What are your thoughts on that? And have you ever talked to anybody that was kind of torn? I could get away with a van. Truck's a little bit better, or a little bit better gas, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, one's a beautiful canvas and the other is a marginalized canvas. It's really just the way it goes, So if I have to work around toolboxes, if I have to work on just a pickup truck versus a service van, it's a no-brainer. It's definitely something that we speak about. Like when a client comes to us, whether it's, let's say it's a plumber and he's got a utility body with a 1,000,000 tool chest on the side of it. And he's like, yeah, but it's super convenient to work on. I'm like, well, I appreciate that aspect of it, but it's awful to brand because I've got to work around now all this crap. I've got to work around door handles and latches and stuff like that. So 100% vans, if you can go that route, it's going to just generate more impressions. It's just going to be more visible. Like it's why a bigger billboard costs more money than a smaller billboard. There's a reason for that.
I like box trucks. One of the questions was box trucks. I like box trucks. I find that box trucks, if I have a choice, I think it may make a lot more sense for plumbers and whatnot. But what ends up happening is they're really tall. I can get in my vans comfortably, and I can fit everything I need, and I could buy them for cheaper. And then here's the nice thing is everybody wants these ProMaster vans in 3-4 years. So as my lease to own comes into effect, all they do is peel the wraps off and they sell them for $20,000. Now, yes, it's going to cost me $50,000 for a new one, all done up. But what's nice is what I learned from Enterprise, and that's what I use, is they showed me this chart, Dan, and they showed me as the miles went up, and they got all these lines going through it, and there was depreciation. So there was this target value is. So there was, if this line coming down is like depreciation. I can't see this backwards, but depreciation coming down, and then you've got miles going up. There's this life at about 100 to 120,000 where it's it's the most amount of money for the miles, and then it just drops off from there. So that's like the premium time to sell that vehicle. I added all these plastic pieces on the side and the back, because how bad does a wrap look when there's shit banging up against it on the side and it's dented? Pretty bad. 100%. So what I would recommend, and this is just a food for thought, Dan, to add in, is anybody that's setting up their trucks, they should use the plastic on the inside to protect, and those wraps will look a lot better and the brand stands out more.
Yeah. Yeah, you look at the box trucks, by the way, when we talk about box trucks, the box trucks that we did for Ellen Rohr at Zoom Drain, like when we rebranded them, so those were really good box trucks canvases. And she didn't go with having all the tool chest on the side. She went a smooth side box truck, and like just so much more impact that way than having to work around all those tool chests. So that's a good example, I think, of a very well branded box truck. She's got the Isuzu ones, I believe, and we did the front in one color and then the boxes in a different color. If anyone's seen the Zoom Drain, like you could look at their stuff. But great canvas, those ones especially.
I've heard you talk about the characters, and you're like, do you want it to be human, or should we do an animal, or should we do kind of should we do the brothers? Like, what are some of the decisions someone should be thinking about when they're like, should it be like a big shark coming out of the thing, or should it be? And you've done a lot of different things with this. You got the cardinal, and like different. Well, how do you kind of? What are the questions that you're talking to owners about when deciding that?
Well, I think you're, again, just trying to get into the mind of Mrs. Jones and trying to figure out how to craft a visual that will be appealing to her and that will help her feel most at ease. Okay. So that's why you've heard me talk a lot about aggressive mascots and, mascots that have like all these muscles and they look very masculine in nature. And you have to be very careful with those types of images because they are frightening. Like they are sending the wrong message, especially to women who are already afraid of who's actually coming to their home. So we try to look at, if we do a mascot or mascot branding, we'll talk about approaches. We'll look at the market to see what is already in the market and whether it makes sense to have another mascot in that particular market or not. But we definitely want to make it something that will feel warm, that will feel friendly, and that will make them feel at ease with who's coming to their home. And people forget about that. Like, you think about how much money on the consumer packaging side is spent on getting women to feel like they want to buy fabric softener. So like, imagine that your home service brand has to be built in the same mindset. Like, how do you build a home service brand that is like fabric softener, right? It sounds crazy to think like that, but that's exactly what you're trying to do, is trying to make them feel at ease with someone who is coming into their home. Okay. So we want them to be friendly, happy, look professional, of course, right? But also make them feel at ease. And so you just got to look at the different styles and what's already in the market and then make decisions based on that. I mean, that's how we do it.
It's from What Women Want with Mel Gibson, but they talked about come see the softer side of Sears, and that increased sales dramatically because they started targeting women. And I think a lot of us as men, sometimes we try to build this badass rap and we got like Tarzan popping out of there, or Rambo, and just we're like, it's G.I. Joe time. And it's like, I don't know, it's like Rampage. And it's like, no, that's cool for like seventh graders that are men. But it's not something that appeals that I want somebody in my house. I'm thinking,
and what do they do, Tommy? They ask all their technicians who are also men.
Yep.
Most of the time. And they say, hey, what do you guys think of that? And like, yeah, that's badass, man. That looks so cool. And you're like, okay, but Mrs. Smith doesn't think that's cool at all. And she's the one making 70, 80% of the phone calls. So why do we build brands that are cool to my buddies and my friends if I'm a guy, instead of really addressing how the brand needs to speak to women first?
It's crazy. And you look at Dollar Shave Club that's made for men. Women, the majority of women were the one that bought the Dollar Shave Club for their husband or boyfriend. So I think that's a great point you bring up, Dan. And when I talked to you originally, I said, look, man, I'm not changing A1. I'm sorry. You tried to convince me otherwise, but I said, here's what I want. I want something that feels good. I want something that looks like it's from the 1960s, that you get a warm feel. I said, I've been on the side of the truck for a long time, so just make it caricature, make it timeless. And you came back with it's absolutely remarkable. And I like A1 for a reason. I keep hearing now that even in the 1930s, when I'm watching an old movie, they're like, yeah, that's A1. That's quality. That's top notch. It means first in class. And I'm glad that it has that that's for people that's what it means. But now I'm like, you got to have what you do in the name, and you got to make it something. I'd make it stand out and something you can tell a story about.
Yeah,
because you really got to think about what's the story. What does it stand for? What are the core values? And then, I got a page here marked. It's you've done all these wall graphics.
Yep.
And they look really good. Lots of wall graphics. We're working on it for us. Is the brand should be all encompassing. It should be the yard signs, the business cards, the uniforms. We get really dirty. So you redid our logo so that the A's a certain way and it's not too far away, the spacing. But these black shirts, they look professional and they never get dirty. And they never ever in the dryer, they don't fade. So that's why they work. But ultimately, you want your core value, your mission, your vision, and the colors to be on every billboard, every yard sign, the website, the business card, the graphics you're putting up at home shows. And very rarely do I see everyone nail every piece of this.
Yeah. And in your case too, when we originally spoke, your original brand colors were black and red and white, really, were your three primary brand colors. And I said, those are very aggressive colors. Those are very masculine colors. And let's soften this approach. So we went with, we kept red because we knew red had value in your prior branding. So I didn't want to throw that away. And I said, we'll keep the red, but let's introduce brown and let's introduce ivory. And let's soften this whole look and make it warmer. And that was really the whole goal of that exercise, was to make the brand warmer, because I wanted it to appeal to women. I wanted it to look very premium also, because those are more premium based colors. So that aspect of it too, just looking at your brand colors and picking colors also that are more in the spectrum that tend to be more favored by women.
James has a question on my polo. Just message me about the polo. I'll tell you what brand and what material. But the fact is, I hate regular cloth. This stretches and it breathes nice. And that's one of the major things that you want to make sure every single thing you're thinking about. Dan just called me last week and he said, hey, man, we need to get you a pair of A1 shoes. And I'm the type of guy that I'll have every single guy wearing those shoes. So I just want to make sure that they're safe and they're not, slip resistant, and they're going to last a while for my guys. So I'll test them out for a while. But we
there we go, Tommy.
Look at that. Is that the KickCharge booster?
Those are the KickCharge. Yep. That's
cool, man. So he just pulled up, for those of you listening. He's got a pair of KickCharge shoes on, and he's very. A1 is part of my life now, and it always will be. No matter what, it's going to be a legacy business. I'm going to do a lot more things. I've kind of been telling Dan, I want you to start thinking about some other industries, because there comes a point in my life, Dan, where we're moving so fast. It's great, but I still feel like if I make a decision, it takes a month, and then I'm twiddling my thumbs and waiting for the team to catch up, because I feel like sometimes the team is everything, and we're building a massive team, and this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar company in revenue. But and then 20% bottom line. Revenue is for vanity, profits for sanity. But ultimately, I just see there's a lot of gaps out there. We're headed into a market right now that's leaving a lot of people uncertain, which is amazing, because they're all quivering. And most of the companies that aren't listening right now, because most of the companies listening are very familiar with my thought process, but a lot of these companies are going to cut their marketing first. They're going to never invest in their brand. The economy goes bad, they're going to keep all those shitty people working for them. A lot of them are great, but they're going to keep that guy that shows up with a bad attitude, and he cusses and he rolls his eyes at the meeting, rather than getting rid of the trash and double downing on marketing. What are your thoughts going into a uncertain market? Let's just call it that.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at that as opportunity. So again, the more guys sitting on the sidelines, the more guys being complacent in their marketing, just leaves the market open for opportunity for those that do embrace the power of branding. So, we're certainly booked out for a while, and I don't see a lot of people suddenly calling us up and asking us to cancel their scheduled appointments with us. So I know those people really get it. But there are a lot of people that will become scared, and they'll start really cutting back on this when they should be kind of doubling down on this investment, because if there's so many people that aren't, that makes it so much easier for you to be actually disruptive. So I think it's going to be a great time over the next, several years. Even if the market's doing bad, you could see how much money continues to flow into private equity and how much money continues to flow into this industry. And I think it actually is going to accelerate even further, because people can't just be putting money into the market anymore because it's not generating returns. So where can they put money where the returns have been relatively consistent, even through COVID? And certainly the home service sector is one that I think you'll continue to see a lot of money coming into private equity. At least that's my opinion.
It's going to be interesting. There's $4 trillion on the sidelines. And I got to tell you, you invested in a house right on the beach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm looking at buying some stuff, but I got to tell you, as I'm looking at real estate, I'm definitely not running in because of the uncertainty, because if interest rates continue to go up, it becomes what's called a buyer's market. Right now, the last decade, really, it's been about a decade now. It's been a seller's market. It's better for a seller than a buyer's. What that means, a seller can make more money by selling. When it becomes a buyer's market, that means I can negotiate more. I can start offering lower amounts. And so I'm really, and I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people, a lot of buddies of mine, a lot of friends that are girls and buddies that are just like, I'm not buying in the next 6 months because I want to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary for new construction. That's what I tell people. Don't have a big amount of new construction. A lot of people say, oh, these customers are my customers for life. You don't understand. They're always going to need to build. And I'm like, yeah, but they start going to cheaper models and they start paying a little bit later. They start tightening up. One guy goes out of business, you get burned. If you had that was some of the money you were planning on making payroll with. Dan, I want to pivot a little bit here towards the end. You posted a picture the other day. You were all swole up at the gym. You started going 3 to 4 days a week, and you said, "Listen, I've missed this since for a long time." You just retooled yourself. I know you went through some health issues that we don't need to go into, but you basically got a second chance.
Yeah,
and you decided to make the most out of it. I want to hear a little bit. As a business owner, what has it done for you clarity-wise? What has it done for you emotionally? What has it done for you just for your family?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge deal, but I mean, I had double bypass surgery about 18 months ago, and I just got really lucky that I was able to get myself fixed up. And so, you kind of go through a bit during that process of really trying to figure out, first of all, like, what do you want to do the rest of your life? And then you recognize the fact that you've been gifted with this opportunity to actually be alive. So I got really lucky. It was a second doctor, like a second opinion, that found what was wrong with me. And then I had surgery a couple of weeks after that. And so I kind of, first off, look at every day as being very grateful that I'm still here. Okay. So you kind of get into a rut and you forget just being grateful. Grateful for your health, grateful for your family, grateful for your team. And while I was out, I mean, listen, double bypass surgery or any bypass surgery is, it's the real deal. Like it's not fun. Right. And so I couldn't work for probably about 4 weeks. I mean, I was messed up. Like I really thought, like, after the surgery, I was like, I'll be back in a week. And man, like it's the real deal, but I had to rely on my team. Like I had to trust them. And I think the years leading up to it, I didn't give them enough trust. I didn't let them run things as much. And I was involved in things that I shouldn't have been involved in. And then I basically came to see how well this place can run without me. And we've had our most successful 18 months since then, right? Because I don't run day to day anymore. I have someone on the team that does that. And I've let people take on more responsibility, and I've stayed more focused on the stuff that I love, which is working on brands. But I don't get involved in, payroll or HR or stuff like that. Like I stay focused on what I really love. And so I look at that event as the best thing that ever happened to me, because it just gave me a new appreciation for what I have and what I've been blessed with. And listen, tomorrow is promised to no one. So while I respect the idea of not doing anything stupid financially as far as where you may spend resources, I also recognize the fact that there's no hearse, there's no Brinks truck that's following the hearse to the funeral home with a bunch of cash in the casket, right? So yeah, I mean, I decide to live a little bit more for today because I don't know what tomorrow looks like. So if that's one lesson that people can get out of that, is just be very grateful for being here today, be grateful for your team, and allow your team to take ownership of things. They'll surprise you. And I shouldn't have been surprised, but I've been just so amazed to see how well the team here has really taken the ball and run with it. And it's been the best experience for me.
Yeah, Gina, I remember you were there, and I was on the phone with Gina all the time, and you're like, dude, we set a record month when I was getting my surgery. Like, she collected too. And it's amazing. You're absolutely right. The team is incredible. They do amazing things. And Steve Jobs, literally some of the last things he talked about is, he goes, you're going to learn to take your food as medicine, or you'll be taking medicine for food. And I think every aspect, not just eating, not just cigarettes, not just alcohol, but the working out, the cardio. You do a lot of biking, and it makes you feel better too. And all of a sudden you go through, and there's a little bit of a high that gets you through the day. And it doesn't need to be 8 cups of coffee. I'll tell you, I'd be very, very, very careful on how much caffeine you're taking in a day. If that's what you rely on, if you need 5-hour energy 7 times a day.
I don't take any caffeine. Never.
It's great.
Yeah.
And you're looking good, man. I wanted to point out too is a lot of times these guys, some of the companies that have come to me, they're like, what do you see me doing if we were to partner up? Well, I say, first of all, let's make you a millionaire. Secondly, just write down your dream job. You just said earlier, you said, look, I like to build brands. I come in here. I think you show up because you enjoy your work. You don't have to be there. And I think that if I could help other companies, especially in garage doors, say, dude, you don't have to have this anchor on you anymore. You get to go on real vacations. Take as much PTO time as you want. Do the things you love again. And I'm not making this about it's just, to me, there's all these, look, I got a text message today. And they're like, well, where do you see me? I want to stay in the business for another decade. Yeah. Well, where do you see yourself? What's a dream job? What's the Dan Antonelli at KickCharge job? Basically is what I'm asking. And if it's everything you want and need and love, then, and you could build your employees that could be homeowners, make more money, and your people could have new trucks and real PTO, then why don't we make this a win for everybody, which is my new book called Elevate. Build a company in which everybody wins. And I'll tell you what, Dan, this book, what was the coolest thing for you? It's an amazing book. Branded, not blanded. KickCharge, your home service brand. And by the way, KickCharge has a TM by it. It stands for Tom Mello, or Trademark. But and then the 4 is by Kent Goodrich. So what was your favorite thing about writing this?
I think the fact that I was able to interview so many owners during the process and just learn how the work that we had done for them had changed their lives. And so that, I mean, we know that, we hear that on a daily basis, but basically to be able to put that in the book and to speak to them and to recognize, and we all live that as a core value here, is the fact that we design as if lives are at stake. Okay. And we recognize that our work has the ability to change people's lives. And I can't think of a better job to have than to be able to do that on a daily basis. So getting those people to participate in the book, and they were all so happy to share their stories. I thought it made the book so much more authentic, because it wasn't just me talking about like, hey, you should rebrand, or you should, invest in branding because it's going to be great. It was like 25 home service owners talking about what it has meant to them and what it has done to their business. And so that was really the best part of writing that book for me, was collecting those stories. Like even the story I got to share for you. I mean, I'm so proud that we were able to work with you to build the brand for A1. I mean, it's one of our probably most successful brands that we've had the opportunity to work for. Look at how many lives were affected by what we did together. And that's
and then you got the sign out front. I mean, look, I got you guys doing. Every time I try to, like, don't take this the wrong way, but like I got busy, you got busy, and I just had my own guys put together the wall graphics, and I got all these notes to send to Gina because I want to get the timeline redone. And we came up with some decent stuff. I mean, but it doesn't scream KickCharge on it, and that's an issue. And I don't care if it says KickCharge on it. I wanted to scream quality, and that's what KickCharge stands for. What's interesting is you got a couple cool pages on here with ROIs. You've got in 6 months, GE 108%, ideal temp 112% in 1 year. Hansen heating and air, 6 years after 1133%. You've got Seatown 137 increased revenue in 2 years, 53% in quality, 619 in looks like GI plumbing. And then you got this other page here, percent of consumers that did not have one company in mind when searching. Appliance repair 80%, carpet 74, decks and patios 83, electrical 90%, home remodel 68, house cleaning 90, HVAC repair 84, lawn care 80. I mean, this is just astronomical. Roofing 80%. If you guys don't get this book, I mean, this is giving me ideas of what businesses I want to go into, what niches. Like, look at the book has, and it's all color. It's high. I mean, this book weighs. It weighs a lot. I mean, it's a heavy duty book. It's got all the glossy pages in it. It's really done well, Dan. You really did yourself here. I really think it's excellent. You got stories in here. You got how to pick the right color palettes. You got when to pick the animal versus the brothers versus this. You've got how to pull it all in on the internet side of marketing as well. I think it's worth buying a few copies and getting some for some friends you care about. You know, Adam's coaching his younger cousin. And man, I had him talk to you. Remember Joel?
Mm-hmm.
And Joel just got done spending $1,500 on a brand, and $1,500 is a lot to him. And I'm like, listen, you're not going to like this, dude. I'm going to give him one of these books. I just saw Billy Klein this weekend. I gave him one, but there's a lot of young people out there that if you got a niece or a nephew or somebody that you're looking, I got a buddy of mine in Las Vegas that's a UFC fighter, and I'm going to send him the book because he's got a little maid service. The least you should do is pick up 5 of these and give them to 5 people you know. You got somebody at church. You got someone out there that needs this. What does this sell for? It's about $29.95. Is that?
It's it's like $29.95 through my site, or it's $35 through Amazon. And I think we have a special for you, Tommy, and anyone that's listening. There's a link that we're going to post that'll be $25, so it'll be less than anywhere else actually. And that'll actually come through me. You'll get my amazing autograph on that book too. It'll be worth hundreds.
It will be. And you know the deal is with Dan. I'll tell you, he cares. And this book, it explains it all. And Ken's got a really cool story in the beginning of how that brand kind of came to be true. And Ken's been really, the first one that told me about you was Al Levy. Ken backed it up, but Al Levy was like, his tip for me was, Tommy, I learned this trick a long time ago. I'm not sure from who, but he takes a picture of it black and white. He looks without any colors and says, does what you do stand out? And mine looked like complete crap. And I didn't know what we did by the black and white picture. You kind of tell it's a garage color. Is this a really bad rap? Who am I kidding? Yeah. It was the shittiest thing of mankind. But I took pride because I'm like, well, everybody says they see it.
Right. And it's not the benchmark. Yeah.
So,
it's seeing it and recognizing what the promise is. That's where most people don't put those two things together. You can make your trucks purple and pink, and everyone would say they see it. Right? Wouldn't they? They would say, I see your trucks all the time. But what does it say about the expected deliverable is the part that most owners don't connect those dots together. They don't link those two thoughts together.
I mean, I don't know how Dan sleeps. Yesterday, he took apart my yard sign again and had some changes to it. And it's little things, the little subtleties, the spacing, the bigger title at the top. And, you know, it's important that you do these things right. And I recommend anybody that hasn't branded their building, when you come to Vertical Track, you'll see what Dan's capable of. It's so powerful what you guys are going to see in our old building, because we really just decided to put the money in to make it, bring the new training center feel to the old building. Last thing here is usually we finish up. First of all, is there any other books you built building a small business brand? You got the Bland and Not Branded. You got a couple early books that I know I have on my shelf. I couldn't find them. But any books that stand out to you that you've read recently that really made a big impact on your life? Maybe not even recent books, but.
I mean, I really like the book Building a Story Brand. I think that's a really good book for people as well. Obviously, it's related to
Donald Miller, right?
Donald Miller. So I think that's a really good book for people to check out. I mean, I love Traction as well. Traction is probably one of my favorite books as far as management is concerned.
Yeah. Cool. Well, listen, we talked about a lot of stuff. You talked about the book quite a bit. You're going to be at Vertical Track the first night on Wednesday, and you're also going to be at Victor's event. Tell me a little bit about any final thoughts, anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't really touch base on.
I mean, we covered so much. Probably the one area we didn't talk a lot about is naming. So I think the book does a great job to talk about naming and the sort of the obstacles that a lot of companies work against with poor naming. So we do a lot of naming as well. Here, we'll probably name 40 or 50 home service companies this year. So naming is probably one of the biggest chapters in the whole book. So I think people will find a lot of really good information about naming, and does their name work? Does their name not work? What are some of the tips to use to creating your own name if you were starting from scratch? So I think that aspect of it, will provide a really good roadmap for people to follow, especially if you're going to be in a startup. Like, you could read this and really learn about how to do it right from day one. I think would be a really good thing for you to, really research and learn more before you start putting money into any branding.
Last thing I'll say is there's still 40 people on here. There was about 55, 60 at the highlight. This is an investment. And listen, at the end of the day, I'm not telling you got to do it. I had a mistake happen, Dan. I'll tell you. I had a guy listening to my podcast, and I was talking all about you. And he went out and spent the full-blown package with you. And I said, okay, we got to build the website and do some SEO and get your GMB. And he goes, Tommy, I don't have any money left. He goes, I wrapped the 2 vehicles I had. And I said, okay, what you didn't, I don't got a website yet. Like, okay, so you spent everything you had. And he goes, well, you said how important it was to brand. I said, that's the most important thing. But there's one more thing, is make sure you got money in the bank or have a line of credit. I didn't realize I needed to go out and say that. So I would say this. I know Dan's working on some creative financing ways, even to get the wraps done, to get the stuff done. But also, if you're young and you got 10 grand in the bank account from your mom, or you saved up mowing lawns or whatever it was, talk to Dan. But Dan's not going to just tell you this is what you need to do. You need to make sure it's the right time to do this. If you got zero money, I just want to put the quotes out there of just understand this is something that needs to be done with every business, and it will always be never a good time. I promise. There's never a good time. And Dan deals with this every day. It's just not a good time right now. I need to call you back. I need to do this. Smart people are sprinting towards KickCharge. They're literally going in head first, going, I have to have this. And they're like, Dan's like, I can't get you in right away. Because the fact is, Dan can't hire enough quality people to do the kind of job he wants done. Right, Dan? I mean, it's impossible to just go out and find 10 artists that'll deliver the quality you want.
Yeah, that certainly is our biggest challenge. We're trying to hire as many people as we can, but there is a certain standard that the brand represents. And I'm not willing to, basically cut corners or do things half-assed. That's just not in our in our DNA. So very, very strategically, we find people, we seek people out, and we have 5 full-time brand developers now plus myself. So we are doing about 5 per week. And that's literally the only thing these guys work on. They don't work on anything else but just branding. We have another whole team that does, like your wall wraps and those, other stuff like that. But literally that's all this entire team does. So the other 5 designers that we have, they'll do brochures and web and all the other things. But it's hard, but I also don't, like I said, it's just really important that the quality stays with us. I don't want to be the McDonald's of steaks or hamburgers. Like I there's a premium for what we do, and I'm not willing to sacrifice that just to do more guys. Like I just want to maintain that level of excellence that we're really known for.
I am emailing you right now because I feel like I need to redo my timeline. I just feel like anybody that looks at something in there and they don't see the KickCharge quality, I kind of feel bad. I didn't do it for any other reason. Like I wasn't like trying to save money. I was just like, man, I get, unfortunately, most of my day is not going towards vertical track. Bree does an amazing job. So 3 weeks out, my brain goes into vertical track mode. And that's when I'm like, shit, I need to get this, do this. And then you're like, dude, can you give me like some more time? And this is kind of like my life. It's last minute stuff, but ultimately you guys come through for me every time. And I owe you just more gratitude than I could ever imagine, even putting into words. You've changed my life. You've changed the people that I've introduced you's life. And I think the people that are listening to this podcast, you're going to change their life. So appreciate who you are. Thank you for just everything you do to the industry and giving back to home service, because it means a lot to me. If you guys don't have branded, not blanded, you're a fool. You need to go online and order right now. Who cares about the $5 savings? That's going to be posted on the site. We'll make sure we add that, but $5, get your hands on it today. Give one to a loved one, and I promise you'll be thankful for it. Dan, thank you so much for doing this today.
Tommy, thanks for everything, brother. So grateful for everything you've done for me, and so proud of what we've done together. So I can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks, bro. It's going to be awesome.
Can't wait, man. You take it easy. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
See you later.